Welcome to True Crime Questions with me. Like, share and subscribe. Let's talk about Bryan Kohberger, the IGG and Othram. Othram assisted the state of Idaho with the Idaho 4 case. The state of Idaho granted Othram a contract in the summer of 2021. Therefore, Othram was readily available for use in the Idaho 4 case. Did the Idaho State Police know they were unequipped to deal with complex cases? What if there are additional unsolved cases that the public isn't aware of? Why was Othram needed in the Idaho 4 case? In the realm of forensics, investigators occasionally come upon a crime scene with DNA evidence, such as blood or sperm, but no specific suspects. Investigators can take this unknown person's DNA and compare it to DNA profiles in the FBI database CODIS to see if there's a match with a known criminal offender. But if there's no match, the perpetrator's identity might remain unknown. Investigators do general detective work to narrow down the suspect pool to one person. This can mean looking at people's age, location, physical appearance, or ability to carry out the crime. The precise way forensic genealogy helped investigators zero in on Kohberger hasn't been previously reported. This is one of the most high-profile cases in which this relatively new, ethically contentious method has been used so soon after a crime has been committed, and it will likely influence how law enforcement approaches it going forward. Though multiple news outlets, including CNN and ABC News, reported that forensic genealogy helped with the case, none has explained how it was used or why it did not appear in the affidavit. That how and why matters. For one thing, it shows that a method known mostly for solving cold cases can apply to ones that are still hot. That may increase demand for an emerging field that was already experiencing a boom. The use of forensic genealogy also underlines that the current storyline about how police identified their suspect, which some are suggesting is a model, is missing pivotal details. Will the use of genetic genealogy testing from labs like Othram become protocol in active criminal investigations? Are they currently proving their equipment and techniques for other labs to see that they are effective in yielding quality results? So, what do they claim? A leather knife sheath stamped with a Marine Corps eagle was found containing a single source of male DNA on its button snap. Seriously? Are you kidding me? That's all they got from that entire crime scene? Let's review some information from this article. The link is in the description box below. How police actually cracked the Idaho killings case. Investigators used forensic genealogy to zero in on suspect Bryan Kohberger. But they aren't saying so. By Heather Tall Murphy. January 2023. Go check it out. According to the author of this article, early on in the investigation, the Moscow Police Department became interested in a white Hyundai Elantra that surveillance footage had captured near the house that morning. Police compiled lists of white Hyundai Elantras, spanning from 2011 to 2016, that were registered at local universities and instructed officers to search for still more. And yet, it would be another month before police arrested Kohberger and charged him with the murders. All the while, investigators would keep pleading for more tips about Elantras. That's because it was not Kohberger's Elantra that had elevated him to a priority person of interest. This is all alleged. Rather, according to a law enforcement source familiar with the investigation with whom the reporter spoke, a key reason police focused on Kohberger as a likely suspect has to do with something that is never mentioned in the 18-page affidavit: forensic genealogy. It was only after investigators utilized a technique reliant on genealogy databases to determine who'd left DNA on a tan leather knife sheath that police requested a search warrant for Kohberger's phone records, according to this source. Up until that point, in late December, he hadn't stood out among all the other Elantra owners, the source said. Something that is reinforced by a close, informed reading of the affidavit. However, the fact that Kohberger lived 10 miles from the crime scene would have helped him stand out, as well as the fact that he owned a white Elantra. An affidavit released late 2022 revealed that on November 29, 2022, just 2 weeks after the crime, These techniques succeeded in identifying a 2015 Elantra registered to Bryan Kohberger, a 28-year-old criminology student at nearby Washington State University. Had their suspect been arrested for or convicted of a felony in one of the states that are aggressive about collecting DNA, officials might have found him by searching a criminal database. However, Kohberger's most notable previous interaction with police occurred fall 2022, when he applied for an internship to work for the Pullman Police Department. The amount of DNA reported to exist is from a single source of male DNA. It is described as partial and incomplete by a well-known professional in the field. With all that we know and don't know, was there really enough DNA to yield quality results? Still, even after pulling the phone records, the team had no way to be certain Kohberger's DNA would match the knife sheath DNA. A genetic genealogy lead is just a hypothesis. After all, a final step typically involves conducting surveillance on the suspect, and then collecting something they've discarded, such as a cigarette butt or soda can, extracting DNA from it and comparing it with the crime scene DNA. On December 27, agents collected trash from outside the Pennsylvania home where Kohberger was visiting his parents. According to the affidavit, the Idaho State Lab reported that there was an extremely high probability it contained DNA belonging to the suspect's father. On December 30, agents arrested Kohberger. Why was Bryan's DNA not collected through surveillance like his father's was? Do you think they should have tried getting Bryan's DNA first through surveillance techniques? Without the use of Othram labs, do you think the evidence against Bryan Kohberger would be sufficient for a grand jury indictment? Or a guilty verdict? How investigative genetic genealogy works. Genetic genealogy is a practice that blends DNA analysis in the lab with genealogical research, such as tracing a person's family tree. Let's take a look at some information from Othram. What makes Othram so advanced? This forensic-grade genome sequencing, or FGGS. The technology Othram uses has been developed by Othram and is considered the most advanced and the largest genome sequencer in the world. Let's discuss KinSNP. What is it? Developed by Othram, KinSNP allows investigators to infer kinship in closely and distantly related individuals, combining the speed of traditional forensic STR testing with the power of advanced SNP testing. KinSNP is used for rapid relationship testing, rapid confirmation or exclusion of relationships between an unknown person and potential relatives. Protect privacy, test fewer candidates and get results in days, not months. Processing DNA is a destructive process. They only have one chance to get it right. Now, if Othram is unable to build out the DNA profile, they will put it on a hold shelf and work to advance their own technology before trying the DNA. Okay, so MPD found the knife sheath at the crime scene. 1122 King Road on November 13, 2022. The Idaho State Lab found a single source of male DNA on the button snap of the sheath, according to a probable cause affidavit. Did the FBI take part in this process? Court documents filed by prosecutors in June 2023 revealed the FBI originally loaded the DNA profile from the knife sheath onto public genealogy sites. The FBI went to work building family trees of the genetic relatives to the suspect DNA left at the crime scene, in an attempt to identify the contributor of the unknown DNA, and then sent a tip to investigate Kohberger, according to prosecutors' STR profiling. The FBI tip pointed law enforcement toward the defendant, but it did not provide law enforcement with substantive evidence of guilt. According to the filing, that filing also stated prosecutors used a traditional STR DNA comparison, a common type of DNA profiling used in criminal cases, and found KOHBERGER was a statistical match with the DNA from the knife. Let's consider what it appears is being said about the processing time of Othram, and consider what may be a possible scenario. The STR was given to Othram, but which agency gave it to the lab? Othram conducted rapid SNP testing and quickly determined that the touch DNA belongs to the defendant, Brian KOHBERGER, within days, confirming the conclusion. Yes, it had to be within days. Is rapid SNP testing what made all the difference in producing the speedy DNA results to execute the arrest by the end of December 2022? Does the timeline add up though? Now, let's discuss the IgG and the cheek swab. DNA used in the STR and SNP came from the button snap of the knife sheath from the crime scene. The cheek swab came directly from Brian. But it's not evidence directly obtained at the crime scene like the knife sheath is. Why is it reasonable to want to use the cheek swab results in the case rather than the IgG DNA results found at the crime scene? Well, the IgG and his cheek swab hold different weight. Do you think one of these types of DNA results is sufficient to meeting the prosecutor's goal? To prosecute? Is the prosecution banking on using the cheek swab DNA to find Brian guilty? DNA that did not come directly from the crime scene? This is still a very new investigative technique, said Jennifer Lynch, the General Counsel of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, a nonprofit organization that defends civil liberties online. I think the public should have the ability to know more about how these sorts of searches are conducted so that we can ensure the police are not just willy-nilly collecting DNA from people and running them against consumer genetic genealogy databases. In all, investigative genetic genealogy was not mentioned in the arrest warrant or in any search warrants in the case. Now, time to hear from you. What are some of your questions and comments? Drop your comment below. Like, share and subscribe. Make sure to check out some of the other videos on the channel. Links provided in the description box below. Thanks for dropping by.